2. All right. Excited about this one tonight. I got a CW5, and for those who don't know what that is a Chief Warrant Officer 5. They are essentially unicorns, right? So we do have a real live unicorn that's here on this virtual set tonight. We're going to talk about a lot of things in his realm of expertise, notably logistics, some of the logistic fun that took place in Afghanistan and our overlapping tours that we had there back once upon a time in 2013, 2014. And then just obviously get his insight on a lot of the things going on, especially today with all the amount of experience he has. Chief Cope, how are you doing?
Very good. How are you doing?
Oh,
Good
I'm
to be
about to
here.
get better, brother. About to get better. As always, tonight's discussion will be fueled by America's native spirit, and this I am finally. You're probably gonna do a bottle kill tonight on this show. So prior to COVID, we used to have these things called bourbon groups out in California that you could join, and you would come together and you would go do barrel picks. And we did this one. Group was called Bourbon Brotherhood. This was a barrel pick from Knob Creek. Obviously, Jim Beam is the distillery who produces them. This is a 15-year, 9-month bourbon. It was from Warehouse W, Floor 4, Rick 25, Tier 1, barreled on January 16th, 2004. I was in Iraq that day. Were you in Iraq in 2004?
What month?
January
When did we invade? Oh
2003.
three.
Yeah, '03. March
Yeah,
2003.
I was there. Yep,
Nice.
I was there too.
Yeah, so that's when this went into the barrel, and we bottled it in June 28th, 2019.
Sweet.
It's called the third Amigo. I had 3 of these bottles, and this is the last of all of those, and we're gonna get into that tonight. So that being said, Chief, are you an imbiber or are you just chilling?
I do.
Yeah.
I haven't since Christmas
Okay.
because I'm doing the keto diet
All
thing.
right. How's that
So I
working?
can, um, so keto works pretty well for me for weight control
Okay.
because I've never failed army weight control, but I've come close, and
Yeah, I mean, you always got to push it. Why not?
the older you get, the harder it gets to drop
Yeah.
pounds. If you haven't figured that out yet, you will.
Well, now you got new
Um,
tape tests, so you should be, the art of
oh, the
don't suck it in, but you can suck it in type of thing.
yeah, yeah. So yeah. Instead, I only have to usually lose like 4 or 5 pounds to where I don't even need taped.
There you go.
Where I make screening weight. So I'm doing that until I have to go somewhere where I'm sweating. So
All right, so you're at 39 years, right? So why the Army? What made you join back in once upon a time? What was it, 80?
oh,
No.
85.
Yeah, 85. Yeah, what drew you to the Army? Middle of the Cold War, what was going on for you back then?
So I was in high school. I grew up on a farm
Okay.
boy. Um, Figured out that if I joined the army, I wouldn't have to get up as early, and that worked out. So yeah, you only have to
Interesting.
get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, whereas on the farm I had to get up at like 3:30 to milk cows.
Oh wow.
And
Dairy farmer.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for up until I was about, I don't know, 14, 15, was dairy farmer. But then I don't know how much you knew about fur prices back then, or ag, or all that kind of
Zero.
stuff, but so back in those days, in the mid 80s, late 70s, early 80s, fur prices were astronomical. So I, of course, didn't make any funny money off of farming because you're an indentured servant on a farm. Um, but then, I'd hire my farming skills out and make, you know, 5 cents or 25 cents a bale, baling someone else's hay or whatever it was.
Mm.
And then, of course, all the farms around us had like predator and nuisance varmint problems. And so back in those days, you could actually sell money selling fur, or make money selling fur. And so I was trapping quite a bit, like raccoons
Okay.
and muskrats and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I actually made more money doing that, but I had to do that before the milking happened, which was at
Yeah.
4:30 to 5 in the morning, and then I went to high school. So
Wow.
So yeah, I got to sleep in by joining the army.
Okay.
And
But
and
so
then it was only a temporary thing until I figured out what I wanted to be when I grow up. And so 39 years later, here I am
you
still trying
figured
to
it
make a
out.
decision on what I want to be when I grew up.
What did you join as? You enlisted first.
But
What?
Yeah, a brand new private E1. I originally was an MP of all
Were you
things.
really?
Yep.
Wow.
So it was either I had one buddy that I was going to high school with tried to talk me into joining the Navy, but then the Army had this cool program where if you joined with your high school buddy, they'd
Yeah.
keep you together through basic and AIT, and so
Yeah.
that's kind of he talked me into that. So that was where I ended up.
I was
So
always surprised that that didn't work more because I think it's up to four individual. You can take your buddy program can be
yeah,
up to four people now. And yeah, I remember like during my recruiting days, we would sit there and talk to the kids, and they're just no interest in that at all. Never put anybody in it. No idea.
really,
No, I
yeah.
never did. Never did. Never saw anybody doing the buddy program. But no, that's where did you guys end up? What was your first duty station?
We were reservists, so they would
Oh,
still.
okay. Straight into the
So yeah, they
reservists.
would.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they would still do that for the reservists. So yeah, I was reserve components. And I lived in Pennsylvania at the time, so I ended up drilling out of a unit near Pittsburgh, which was like a 45-minute drive from where I lived in rural Pennsylvania.
I was attached to a
And
unit in Iraq in '03 from Pennsylvania. What the hell were they? It's a postal unit. 23rd
mhm,
AG. Does that sound familiar? 23rd.
it could be, yeah.
Yeah, they were they were Pennsylvania unit. I remember. I thought they were close to Pittsburgh. A lot of troublemakers, those guys, you know. Um, all right, so you did that, and then how did you find your way into the world of the warrant officer corps?
So ended up moving away from the Pittsburgh area and moved for in between Pittsburgh and Erie to another rural unit. And by that time, like most reservists, you end up reclassing. I think I had like six MOSs before
It is amazing.
I settled on
It's a well
something.
kept secret for some reason. Yeah, I never realized how
It
many people
is,
get those MOSs until they get to the reserves and they just, hey, you
and
need
that's
one?
kind of it's the advantage over the reserve components, especially in the Army Reserve, is that if you don't like the unit you're in, you can vote
Yeah,
with your feet.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, leave.
so, and a lot of people don't realize that,
Yep,
and especially
100%.
when you get to the senior levels, then your options become more limited.
Yeah.
Like where I'm at now. Um, but at that time, I'd moved about 2 hours north of Pittsburgh and was a mechanic at that point and ended up figuring out, hey, if you want to make rank as a mechanic in the reserves, you can't do it because there's an AGR in the way. But if you go warrant, you can kind of skip around them.
Skip
And
the
so
red tag. Yeah.
that's exactly what I did and became a maintenance warrant and didn't deploy with them. I ended up getting hired on as a UA, as they were known at the time, um, which the Miltech, dual status Miltech, and and then ended up getting a job offer out here in Montana shortly thereafter and moved out here in 2000.
Have you been in
And
Montana that long?
yes,
Oh, wow. How is it? Obviously, it's being overrun, I heard, but
freaking love it. Yes, it
yeah.
is getting overrun, which is causing like a lot of distortions in like property values and whatnot.
Yeah. Like I've
But
looked
other,
and
yeah,
it is absolutely not cheap. Not
no,
what like people
no,
think. I think people think like, oh yeah, you just get, tons of land and a big 8,000 square foot house for 200 grand. It's
yep.
like, no, those days are over.
200 grand doesn't even get you a single wide trailer made in the
Yeah.
70s around here now.
Yeah, I've done some Zillow reconning once upon a time. It doesn't look promising, but um yeah, 25 years out in Montana. So you okay, so were you in the first Gulf War? Did you go with them?
So I was mobilized. So I was still in that MP unit in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, and I was mobilized for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. We ended up as a battalion backfilling a MP battalion in Germany, where half the battalion stayed and the other half of the battalion went to Saudi Arabia
That's
slash
not bad.
Kuwait.
I'll take Germany
So
any
I
day.
ended up in
I don't
Germany
know. How
rather
about
than,
then? How was Germany back then? Yeah.
oh my God,
Yeah.
um, almost 4 marks to the dollar. So, and I
I
was in
do
E
remember hearing that. Yeah.
I was an E4 at the time. We were still getting cola. So I was as an E4, I was probably making 1,600 bucks a month, worked out to like 3,800 to 4,000 a month
Oh
in
my God.
Deutschmarks,
Yeah.
and a beer was like 3 marks. So I mean, yeah, you're living like absolute kings.
I had a buddy that was
That
stationed in Italy before they switched over to the euro and they had the lira.
mhm,
It was the same something ridiculous, like 6 or 7 to 1. It was stupid. And then overnight, it
yeah,
all went away, and the euro became. Yeah,
yeah.
that's wild. So you spent how long were you in Germany?
So I was there for like 7 months, because
Man,
Desert
that ain't
Storm
bad at
didn't
all.
last that
No, it
long.
didn't, but that's not
Yeah.
bad. 7 months. Were you allowed to actually enjoy the country, or were you guys kind of
Oh,
hey, we're
absolutely.
okay? Yeah, things are so
No,
much
there
better
there
back
was
then. I swear.
there was nothing crazy like Geo number one.
Yeah,
I
that's
I
what.
could have I could have I drank my body weight 5 times over in beer when I was there. Went explored 2 or 3 different countries.
See,
Was there. You got to remember that was also about the same time frame the wall was falling.
yeah,
So
so
yeah,
yeah,
there were
some
there were
crazy
East
times.
Germans. Yeah, it was really a great experience.
Where did they station you guys?
So I was in so our battalion was in Stuttgart,
Okay, yeah.
and then my company
Made
was
famous this
in.
week.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. Go running with the 10th Special Forces group with
Yeah.
Mongo, and
Fucking guys, massive.
yeah, that poor dude thought, woke up, said, "Hey, you want to go run with the SecDef?" By noon, he's a
Yeah,
meme.
yeah.
And by the next day, every guy that's ever served with him is poking fun at him
Gotta
for
be.
being a meme
Gotta
now.
want so much for the anonymity of the SF, huh? So he's
Yeah,
out.
he shot that out the window. But yeah, anyhow, so I ended up in a little town called Schwäbisch Gmünd, which was only famous because that was one of the places where Pershing 2 missiles were located. Pershing 2 missiles were an intermediate range nuclear missile
Oh, wow.
that would fit on basically a truck that looked a lot like a Hammett.
Were they ours?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep. It had about I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 mile range or something like that, carried a 10 or 100 kiloton warhead. Yeah, they were pretty impressive. So,
That's not
so
a
that
bad.
that was so we ended up being the MP company for the artillery brigade that was stationed there that was in the process of turning in their Pershing 2 missiles because they were being deleted due to the START 2 treaty. So
Ah, the ones that we adhered to, but nobody else did, really. Yeah.
nobody else did. Yeah. So
Got it. Okay. Okay. So you come back and you have seen pretty much everything from modernization starting from 91 to when we got to Iraq in '03, where we were rolling up there with no such thing as armor or plates unless you were a tier one or a
oh my
DA
God.
unit. Like, so you've seen that version of it. You've seen all these uniform changes. You've seen
Yep.
GO1 get implemented. Please, let's start there. Tell me how something like that comes about. What happened to letting soldiers have fun?
Risk aversion.
Oh,
Risk
come on.
aversion at
That's it's
leadership
also
levels.
winning war aversion is what it is.
Absolutely. Just once in my life. All right. So, 39 years, I've been counting. Now, Desert Storm wasn't a combat mobilization for me personally, but, it was still a mobilization for a wartime. So I guess I did luck out there, like my grandfathers before me, where I go to war in a place that has great food, good beer,
Yeah.
and hot chicks.
Yeah. We
I
didn't
want
get
that
any of
one more
that.
time. I want that one more time before I retire because ever
Before I
since
retire.
2002, I've been deployed to CENTCOM like 5 times between Iraq and Afghanistan. And there is no good beer, hot chicks, or the food. It's debatable. I do actually
I
like
do like the
Afghan
food. Yeah,
food.
I do as well. I was that's one of your posts that I really liked is the recipes and the chow halls that we used to have access to. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but when was the first time you saw that though? Because I mean, to be honest,
So
like the first 6 months in Iraq in '03 before first AD showed up, it was kind of, we didn't really have any of that. And then they turned it into garrison life.
Well, it was implemented, but I mean, it was the
Who
Wild
knew?
West. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
from the invasion until about January of '04, it was Wild West. I
Yeah.
mean, it was do what you want.
Yeah.
Um, and everybody was for the most part.
Oh, yes.
And so, yeah, it's, I'm not going to, well, I get, I don't know. Is there a statute of limitations on the UCMJ?
Uh,
Because I drank alcohol in Iraq. Fuck it.
well, I did as
It's like,
well. So, I mean, we'll go down together, whatever.
yeah, exactly. So,
Actually, I remember it was a beer from Egypt. It was called Petra. And it was like a blue and gold can, I think. I
yep.
may be wrong, but
So,
yeah, it was Petra. And we used the Kuwaiti truck drivers would bring it up for us. It was great.
well, in my case, so I ended up in, so for after the initial invasion, all right, so we skipped forward another 10 years. So I've since, as an ARA, got hired on, or UA as they were known back then, moved to Montana back in 2000. Been living in Montana since 2000. And then up comes, 9/11. 9/11 happens. That's still vividly burned in my memories, heading to work and, hearing about, I was driving to work as the second plane was hitting and heard it on radio news and got to work and,
You were in Montana
emails
when that?
blowing up. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
Kalispell,
two
Montana.
hours behind. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah. And, so yeah, it was dealing with that, and then of course the invasion of Iraq happens, and we were the quartermaster unit that went in behind Third ID after the invasion and established all the water purification and fuel points
I think you
from.
guys were setting up showers in Baghdad. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, we didn't go that far north. We set
Okay.
everything up from the Kuwaiti border to
So you did
Al
like Camp
Hilla.
Cedar 2 and all that stuff and Camp
So
Cedar.
we did Camp Cedar 1.
Okay.
Then, after as they were shutting Cedar One down, because it was a safety hazard. If anybody who has ever been to Cedar One,
Yeah.
it was like knee deep moon dust,
Yeah.
and it was so there were so
Which
many
is where I
accidents.
theorized that we faked the moon landing was actually there.
Well, it ended up being so much of a safety hazard that we were losing people to vehicle accidents and convoys because you get a het company come in to fuel up at
Oh, you
Cedar
can't
One
see.
and you can't see for hours
Yep.
just from them alone.
Wild.
And then so they
Wild.
ended up moving it like what, 40 miles, 30 miles
Yeah.
north to Cedar 2. We established Cedar 2. When we arrived at Cedar 2, all that was there was an infantry platoon. That's it.
Just hanging
So
out.
my unit, the 889th Quartermaster Company, established Cedar 2, well, other than the infantry platoon that was already there. And we set up the first MKT there. We set up the first fuel point, but we had all the fuel points between Kuwait and Al Hilla. So
Okay.
the Scania,
Yeah,
Al
Scania.
Hilla, yeah,
Yeah.
that was us.
That was a wild
So
time. That was a
yeah, it
wild,
was.
very wild time, especially coming out of there because we left in May of
Yep,
'04. Um, and we were escorted by an
yep.
MP battalion from First AD. And that was when
Hmm.
Nazaria and all his bullshit was kicking off with camp, or not camp, but Al Sadr
Yep,
going through Nazaria. That was an interesting time. But yeah,
yep. So I was
we had
there the
a we had
same
a
time. Only I was there. I had at the time was in charge of a maintenance support team in Najaf. So if you remember all the
yeah
shit that was going
yeah
down in
yeah.
Najaf, so you had guys like Travis Haley has that famous video of him
Mhm.
on top of the Coalition Provisional Authority building, as a sniper engaging people. Yeah, we were in the camp there was shaped like a dumbbell. He was in the southern dumbbell portion of it. I was in the northern dumbbell portion of it. And it was connected by a little road that was
Mm.
linked with sea wire in between.
Yeah, well, that was what was
And
wild about that is so we had a short halt in Camp Cedar 2, turned into a week, and they turned that whole MP battalion back around because of what was going on, and then they got lit the fuck up on their way back to Baghdad. Like
yeah,
that's when the insurgency like it started kind of like November '03 when they shot down that first Chinook going that was taking soldiers on leave. Um, But it
That's
really
right. I
started
forgot
to
about
pick
that.
up. Yeah, it really started to pick up after that. Like
Like
yeah.
April
And
of
they let us go
04.
on because there was only like 23 of us from the reserves that they're like, you guys go head down and go back home because we'd already been extended 4 times. But yeah, I felt bad. Yeah, those dudes got hit pretty hard going back.
Yeah.
That was a wild
Oh,
time.
yeah.
I can't
Yeah, it
believe
was.
21 fucking years ago, man. 22. March
Tell
is
me
coming.
about it. Yeah.
2 years ago. There's people joining the
There's
army that weren't
people who
even
have joined the
alive,
army.
man. They have no fucking idea.
There's
Weren't even
people that have
alive.
joined the army and retired since then. Since
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. That's
So
crazy. Um, all right. Now, real quick, before because I do definitely want to cover this logistics piece of our Afghanistan and kind of dive into some of that stuff that's in your thread and all.
yeah.
But yes, we are in a new era, especially for the military as a whole, but your specific world. What is your initial feeling, your take, your outlook on the new Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth?
So I don't know him personally. However, he and I have mutual friends.
Hmm.
So like one of the former, well, I won't identify with specifics, but a former major who's now since retired in the Virginia Guard is a good friend of mine, and he's friends of his, and
Okay.
he speaks very highly of him.
Yeah,
Soon
everyone
as
seems to.
soon as he got nominated, I bought his book and read it just because, hey, man, new boss is coming in, gotta
Yeah, exactly.
read them and
Familiar.
figure it out.
Yeah.
And read it on since I'm TDY so much and on plane so much that yeah, I ended up reading his book one flight, a couple 2 or 3 TDYs ago, and yeah, it was. I'm pretty impressed with what I'm seeing so far. A lot of the opposition is like, oh, we should choose this smart general officer and all this and that. And here's where I'm going to skate real close to Article 88 of the UCMJ. You know what? I can point to about 20 fucking general officers that lost this war over the last 22 fucking years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you know what? Let's try some field grades. You
Yeah.
know, if you really want a wild ride, get a grumpy fucking warrant officer and we'll show you how this shit really works.
You
I
put
don't
a
think you guys are
CW5
ready
next.
for that.
That's yep. Next will be the
Yeah.
CW5, and then they'll be like, "Who
I
is
don't
this
I
fucking
don't
guy?"
think anybody's ready for that. There's going to be a lot of butt hurt, but yeah, nobody's ready for that. But so far from what I'm seeing, like he got criticism on this European trip for not going to the Munich security conference and instead going, jogging with Mongo and doing PT with the 10th group.
Yeah.
Well, that's, pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's I see a more focus certainly from senior leadership on nobody cares what an '06 and above thinks, honestly. Yeah, you can say this
True.
program is important and
It's
that
true.
program's important. You know who's really important is that E3 out there on the line with a fucking rifle.
Exactly.
And everybody loses sight of that because now we have more '06s than we do infantrymen. Look at your MTOs.
That's
Yeah,
fucking
we got
wild.
more,
That's
you
wild.
know, especially when you look at 11 Bravo, E7 and below, we've got more '06s in all specialties combined than we do. And
Yeah, that
then now you look at it as far as general officers go. Hegseth correctly pointed out that we did World War II with like what 14 or
yeah,
something or
something like that.
44,
Something
44 4-star generals and above, and now we have like 400 and some ludicrous
that didn't make
number.
sense. You used
You
to be able
know,
to name
in
these people, and now you're like, "Who the fuck is that?" I didn't know. You're
yeah,
like, "Oh shit,
yeah,
you're a 4 star. You kind of matter," but apparently you don't because no
World
one
War
knows who the fuck you
II.
are.
In World War II, we had a 14 million man force,
Isn't that crazy?
count, counting all
And we had a five
forces.
star. We did have a 5 star though too. We did.
We had a couple of 5 stars,
Yeah.
or we had like three five
Yeah.
stars.
What was it? Bradley, Eisenhower, and who was that?
MacArthur,
MacArthur. That's right. There you go.
yeah, and then the Navy had Halsey and Nimitz.
Nimitz.
So
Yep. He's got his own war. What? He's got his own what?
air,
Aircraft.
aircraft
Aircraft
carriers.
carrier class. Yeah. There you go.
Yep. So we it's I think cuts are needed,
Yeah.
certainly, and as a logistician, I can certainly tell you cuts are needed. Now, that said, the cupboard is pretty bare right now on the logistics side.
And that's what it's like. So I talked about this with the previous guy I had on, and he came from your side of the world, from the senior enlisted side. But at the same time, you're right. Like, it blows my mind to know that there are reserve units right now who've got parts on back order for over a year. They've got
Gotcha.
tires that haven't been able to be changed for years. Like,
Yes.
there's so many vehicles deadline, and for those who have no idea what that term means, that by definition you cannot move them by the regulation because they're not suitable for fucking to work, right? And
Yeah.
we've got so many of those right now, and I need to understand. Tell me how that's happened with the budget, with the size of everything that goes into the military. Please tell me from your perspective, because you like I said, seen it all. You're also at
Specifically Army
the
Reserve.
highest
Yeah.
level. Yeah, and in the
Yeah.
reserve. How has that happened?
So, how long have you been in the Army Reserve?
23 years.
Okay, good. So, you and what exposure do you have to maintenance?
Very little. Just
Okay.
user level for the most part, to be honest. Just I
Okay.
know what I needed to do as coming up on my vehicles that I was a driver for.
Yep. Okay,
Skill level
perfect.
10. There we go. That's what I got.
Yep. So you
I know how
pull
to
out your
PMCS.
your PMCS, you note a default.
Yep.
You write that default down. You hand it in to the maintenance guy at the end of PMCS.
Yep.
He looks at it, hands it to his parks clerk, and this parts clerk says, or he tells the parts clerk, yes, I went out and verified the alternator is in fact bad. Go ahead and order an alternator for this company. And then the the parts clerk gets into, let's see, over the years, it started out as Olds G, and then it went to Sam's, and now it's GCSS Army, and orders that part. Well, your battalion only got $9,000 in Class 9 budget. Now I'm making a guess, but that's about what it works out to, about $3,000 per company order that part.
So for those who don't know, real quick, what's class 9?
Class 9 is repair parts.
Okay, there you go.
So repair parts. So up until very recently, all right, we've got what? Well, up until very recent, up until 5 years ago, we had 200,000 troops, 205,000 troops in the Army Reserve. And I forget how many units that is. I used to know it off the top of my head, but there's been so many changes in the last 3 to 5 years that we're now down to like 160,000. So up recently, there were two major commands in the Army Reserve that consumed 60% of the Army Reserve's Class 9 repair parts budget. That was the Army Watercraft Battalions and the Army Aviation Command, Army Reserve Aviation Command.
Okay.
So when you order parts or you order a maintenance service on an aircraft, how much do you figure that costs?
A lot.
About $800, about $800 an hour or more for an aircraft. For a watercraft,
That's
just
even more, right?
fueling the damn thing up might cost you $2 million of
What?
fuel. Yeah. If you have an Army watercraft that's
Fuck.
going on a trip from Florida to Spain, that takes 20, 30, 40,000 gallons of fuel.
God.
So just the fuel budget alone was crippling it. And so somebody got the wise idea, General Lucky, to get rid of Army watercraft because about half of the Army's watercraft were in the Army Reserve
Yeah.
and they were constantly mobilized. It's constantly to CENTCOM and they were getting overused and we need them. So somebody convinced some general officers, hey, look, man, this unit alone, this battalion is consuming 38% of your Class 9 budget for the entire Army Reserve. and it was substantial. And they're correct. When you do an A service, an annual service, where you go through and stem to stern, whether it's a Humvee or whether it's an LSV, logistics support vessel, if it's your Humvee, your mechanic in your motor pool, first sergeant, can get that done probably over a weekend, maybe 3 days, or a complete A service, oil change, filter change, rotate the tires, whatever the current service is for a Humvee. For an Army watercraft, it had to go to, I want to say, Mississippi. So it had to get transported to Mississippi, meaning you had to fuel it up with 15, 20, 30,000 gallons of fuel to get it there. You had to put people on orders to drive it there, sail it there.
Hmm.
And then, all right, so you know what an AMSA shop is.
Yeah.
How many watercraft AMSA shops are there in the Army Reserve?
No idea.
Well, up until recently, there was only one. Now there's zero.
So who's
And
doing the maintenance?
the Army Reserve no longer has watercraft because somebody convinced
But we still have
General Lucky.
water warrants, don't we? Don't we still have boat warrants? I mean, I
Yeah,
knew
we've got
one
a
at the
few.
143rd. I knew one.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. We still have a few floating around, and they're still on MTOs at certain, like we have one at the Theater Sustainment Command, and I want to say the ESCs probably have them too, but they're mostly in an advisory role, and
Yeah.
we're going to ultimately lose them eventually because there
There's
simply
nothing
will
to
be no one
revise.
left
It's
because we no longer have the boats. So
oh, what? All
so
right.
that's a major part of logistics,
So
which is
did
a
that,
whole.
but has that solved anything by eliminating that? Has that helped the parts budget?
Not really,
Yeah.
because when was the last time the United States government had a budget?
Oh man. Probably pre-COVID, maybe.
Barack Obama was president the last
Yeah.
time we had an honest to God budget. We've been mostly operating on, with
CR.
the exception of a couple of NDAAs, we've been mostly operating off of continuing resolutions ever since. So you cannot plan and forecast when you are operating under a continuing resolution. We're starting to see that now with current operations either ongoing or about to occur shortly, that hey, our budget runs out in like March 12th, March 15th, something like that.
Do you
Our
think
current budget.
Hegseth is smart on this stuff? Like, do you think he knows all that stuff yet?
I think he's getting smart on it. I think he is probably surrounded by some of the right people. Um, and if not, I'm sure, word can get to him either through congressional members on like the House Armed Services Committee and Senate Armed Services Committee, because they hear from guys like me. It's like
Yeah.
I know my congressman, he's a military vet, and I occasionally talk to him about stuff like this and tell him, hey man, now he used to be on the Armed Services Committee, he's no longer this term, but I mean he can get word, he knows the guy who is.
Yeah. No,
So
that is just it is such a like how did we get to that point though from a budget standpoint where it's just like, you know what, let's not even bother at trying to do the right thing. Let's just keep doing this fucking continuing resolution shit. And I
well,
don't know like how I didn't really look too much at it today, but I saw like supposedly congressional Republicans put forward a $4 trillion increase in spending. Like,
I haven't seen that.
I'm not sure that's
The
reading the
budget.
room, as our friend Tap likes to say. Like, I don't know if that's sticking with what the flavor of the day is with Doge and reduction and trying to cut
Well,
waste.
and that's
But
you're starting to see the daily outrage from the political left over, and Doge hasn't even dug in deep on any of this stuff
no,
really.
they're doing all like
They're just
they're
they're
doing
they're
the big
skimming the wave.
names. Yeah, they're
They're
doing like
skimming the wave tops, and still they found like 80 or 100 billion in waste in graft. I mean, what was it? The Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, today announced that there's been over 2 trillion with a T, big T, in Medicare Medicaid payments made overseas fraudulently. 2 trillion.
it's
You know, And
It has
so
to be.
at
How else
this,
could you get to 39 trillion in debt? There, it has to be fake. Like it
yes,
can't be real.
yeah, and at some point, I think when Doge finally starts digging into the entirety of the federal budget, when they get their teams into each agency, just the outrageous stuff that they found in USAID, which I don't know how much experience you have on your deployments with USAID, but I mean,
Seen their
clearly
vehicles drive by, but I don't really have
yeah,
any.
they were clearly a front for fraud, in everything that I saw. So, I mean, yeah, it's like, everyone, you make the jokes of like, the Air Force isn't spending $600 on a toilet seat, or a hammer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's because it's getting diverted into black programs. It's like USAID and CIA's budget. So, but
It's just it's hard to
and
think it's gotten to this point. It really is.
here's the funny part. So Doge hasn't even got to the DoD yet.
No, which
I'm going to
fortunately they're
laugh
on
my
tap.
ass off. I'm going
Yeah.
to laugh my ass off when I see the political left screaming to keep the DoD's budget
Yeah.
after 30 years of you can't hug children with nuclear arms, and all this stuff from the left of trying to cut the Defense Department.
Now they want to keep
Very
it.
shortly, they're going to take a
Oh
180
yeah.
and defend an $890 billion DoD budget. And you and I know there's ways to be cut. Now, money needs to be diverted into
Maintenance.
soldier care and maintenance, class
Yeah.
9 parts, quality of life for soldiers, new mold in the
Yeah, it is
barracks
just
kind of stuff.
wild that like that's why I struggle, man. Like I really do because I know like we're at different levels, but it really bothers me when it's those things, knowing like what you just said. It's an $890 billion budget and the basics aren't taken care of.
No,
Like I could be fine with 890 billion. Just let me know that we're struggling with some really high-tech shit that we can't quite fund. But you know what? Joe's got his fucking food and his ammo and he's got his vehicles working and he lives in nice clean barracks that doesn't have to worry about catching a fucking like lung attack or some shit for. But we're
yeah,
struggling with
exactly.
that really high-tech purchase of some fucking program, right? No,
Or
that's
or,
priority, not Joe.
or he shows up at the chow hall and gets like 350 calories
Yeah, here you
of
go. And this is all you're allowed.
mediocre food.
I used to love that
It's like,
shit when we're deployed, like, oh, you can't have two meats. Like, okay, or what? What fucking happens if I don't get that second chicken breast, Ahmed? Get the fuck out
yeah,
of here, man. It's like shit like that. I was like, you guys gotta be where is this food going if it's not going to the soldiers? You're trying to tell me my
yeah,
soldiers can't have two pieces of meat? Cool.
yeah,
Oh man, thanks. I'm glad. I'm glad we got that situated.
yeah, exactly. So I think, we're only what, 24, 23 days into the
Yeah,
administration, and
it's
there's like
fairly early.
three outrages from the
Per
left per
day.
day. Yeah, which I mean, I'm bathing in. It's just glorious to watch. But yeah, I'm sure within a week or 10 days or whenever Doge, 2 or 3 days after Doge gets to the DoD, yeah, the left is going to be defending an $890 billion
Yeah.
DoD budget.
Well, I did see the Marines pass their audit, so which I'm not surprised. They're
And it's not the first one they've passed.
yeah,
They've
no, they're
passed, I want to
actually
say
pretty
for the
good at
last
this
4 or
stuff.
5 years. They've been
Yeah, they're
good at
pretty
it.
good at this. They're pretty good at it, like pretty much just about everything that relates to a standard. They're pretty good at. I wish we all
Yeah,
were.
yeah. So
Have you ever seen a CW5 in the Marines? Have you ever met one?
I have.
Have you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have. Yeah, they as you might imagine, they have fewer than we do
Yeah.
since I mean they're only at what 174,000.
Yeah.
And so the Marine W5s, yeah, there might only be one or two per career field.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just about a year ago I went down to the headquarters of the Marine Corps Reserve in New Orleans,
Mhm.
which is where their version of USARC for us, like USARC for us is located in Fort Bragg.
Yep.
Um,
We're back. Fort Bragg.
we're back, and so the headquarters, of the Marine Corps Reserve, is in New Orleans, and I happened to have an occasion about a year ago to go over there and brief them in theater logistics because they were wanting to get smart on theater logistics. Like, what do you do in a theater opening, or if we're opening new JOAs or whatever joint operations areas?
Mhm.
And so me and my SPO colonel went and briefed them, and they were just kind of blown away with like the Army's sustainment structure because we're extremely robust, as far as like theater opening and opening new JOAs
Yeah.
and the whole 9 yards. Now they were kind of basing it around the Pacific, which I think we are woefully unprepared for because of its size.
Yeah.
And the fact that here we're going to get back to the watercraft, who, by doctrine, has the responsibility for intra theater logistics, lift, and transport.
Us.
It is the Army
Yeah.
by doctrine. Yeah, you would think, oh, that's the Navy or that's the Air Force. They have cargo ships and cargo aircraft. Well,
Uh-uh.
no, they don't. Transcom is going to have all that shit maxed out getting people into theater.
Yep.
They don't have time to.
Get
They can't
equipment and
fly
all.
you
Yeah.
fuel.
Yeah.
And as far as there's a fellow on Twitter X by the name of John Conrad, who is
Wait,
like
hold on.
the hugest proponent for maritime lift.
Was he a CW5?
No, he was
Okay,
not.
because I was
He's
going to
he's
ask you, the only CW5 I ever knew in my life was Chief Conrad from the 14030 SC. I was going to say, wait a minute, is that him? I didn't know his first name.
no,
Okay.
no, no. That's so. John Conrad is a maritime journalist out of
Oh,
Massachusetts.
okay.
He'd be a good guy for you to interview for a podcast like this. So he's
Noted.
on
I will make a
Twitter.
note of that. John Conrad. Okay.
But he is a former merchant marine guy. Uh,
Ah, okay.
so he's a big proponent of especially as the focus shifts to the Pacific in what our shortfalls are as a total force for logistics power projection. And we have, especially over the course of my career, degraded significantly because we've gotten complacent in dealing with the smallest combatant command on earth, CENTCOM. Everybody's touts, yeah, and we did a lot of good shit in CENTCOM, don't get me wrong, but it's the smallest combatant command on earth.
Mhm.
It's from Israel to, you know, the Pakistan border or whatever, and from, Yemen to Tajikistan or Kazakhstan or whatever. So it's relatively small, and we've spent 30 fucking years perfecting our logistics there to the point where, you know, 7/8 of everything is run by contractors. Well, what happens if you had to do it over again with a brand new force and invade a new place, like the Philippines or Taiwan or something like that? Well, good luck,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we've given away the house when it comes to logistics capabilities, shipping. The Navy lately has been retiring twice as many ships as they've been replacing them with. So that our ability to sustain ourselves in the largest combatant command on Earth, PACOM, is going to be seriously degraded. I mean, we're struggling to keep up our military support and aid to EUCOM for the rotations that we have going on with the Baltic countries and Poland, and mostly support to Ukraine and whatnot. Because we've given away a lot of our stuff to Ukraine. Take a look in your MTOs for you know people will kind of poo poo me for saying it, but we used to have a lot of M113 APCs and
Yeah.
M577s and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't think we have one left in the Army Reserve because
Really?
we've given them all to Ukraine.
What was the point of that?
So
Was there the
how they sold
would the
how they
idea to
sold it to
replace
the
it with
American
something
public.
X or what?
Exactly. That's how they got the idea to sell it to the American public under the previous administration is, oh, look, we'll give this stuff away. And no, we're not giving this money away to Ukraine. It's actually staying here with the military industrial complex to develop armored support vehicle X, or whatever. I forget what the name of the next gen M113 is, or that's supposed to replace both the 113 and the Bradleys. But that's what the next thing on the drawing board is, brought to you by Raytheon, whose board
Hey,
member is,
General Austin. All right. Maybe is he
yeah,
back there
General
yet? Is
Austin.
he back? Oh,
I
former
don't
self.
think he ever resigned. So,
You might be right. Like again, that is a like I said, that's a big just juxtaposition between him and who we have now. That's for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Which I had worked with Lloyd Austin in the past back in like '07 or so. And yeah, it's
He had like
wasn't that
everyone
impressed.
had such high hopes after the invasion in Iraq. Like, and when he was, you know, I mean, he failed up pretty well. It's not like
Yeah.
I hate to say it, like, hey, everyone had high expectations. Well, yeah, he made it to SecDef, so yeah, I mean, I guess he lived up to them, but well, he
Hmm.
made it to them. He didn't. I wouldn't say he did anything with. I don't know. I'm a critic, right? I'm not a fan. I don't think I've hid that on many of these episodes. I am
No, and
glad to
and
see him
neither am
gone.
I.
Glad to see him
Yeah,
gone. To be honest.
and General Milley as well. Honestly,
Yeah, we're gonna get to him at some point. Before we get to General Milley, though, all right. Let's transition to the because you have an incredible thread that's out there on the Twitter, the X world, but it's about all of just a lot of issues. But let's start mainly with the vehicles in Afghanistan. How many vehicles did we give to the ANA?
Oh my God. So you see in my pinned thread on Twitter, now X, at ELCOPE1. If you go to my Twitter landing page, it's the only pinned thread I have at the top. And it was, I forget what spurred me to create it, but it was, I don't know, something going on about, oh, we didn't spend that much money in Afghanistan, or somebody, I know what it was. Somebody was arguing about, oh, we didn't leave all this hundreds of billions of dollars worth of equipment in Afghanistan. And right there, I'm like, whoa, 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 let me throw the fucking bullshit flag because I was there giving it away. That was my role. And so I have all my pictures and I have, you know, my deployment to Afghanistan was absurdly long because the boss I worked for was one of the best O6s I've ever worked for. Um, Kept talking me into staying. Hey, Ed, your replacement's not coming, blah, blah, blah. Can you stay another 6 months? Well, he did that to me 3 times. I ended up staying 22 months in
Nice.
Afghanistan.
So
Yeah,
you
it
you fell in
sucked.
on and ended with well, I don't remember what was the what preceded Drumbeat.
What do you mean?
The operation, well, because Operation Drumbeat was when we were trying to get everything out in 14, and we were
Oh,
like all the
oh,
rolling
so
stock and all that stuff out.
everything was still coming in when I was there, 13 and all the way up to, so I was there from like May of 13 until
I
the
got there,
end of
and
December 14.
so they never
And
bothered.
everything was still coming in at that point. I mean, shit, we still had 2 or 3 thousand impounded
Well, you're talking about vehicles
Conexes.
for the ANA was still coming in.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's not what. Yeah, so okay, I get that. I meant like our rolling
our
stock is supposed to be getting out of there.
our rolling stock. All right, so our footprint had reduced, and they had moved a lot of our stuff to Bagram,
Yeah.
but there was still quite a bit of stuff like at um, some we had given to other coalition partners, some we had given to what was that compound across from the embassy?
Oh shit.
NKC,
Well, NKC,
NKC,
yeah, that's where I was at. Yeah.
NKC.
Yeah.
They'd given some to them, but a lot of it was stored in the crisp yard there
Yeah.
in Bagram. And so they, at the time, if you remember leading up to that, they were looking, well, up until like November of 2013, the plan was to ship our stuff out by land through Uzbekistan
Yeah.
to Tashkent, Uzbekistan, which is the closest railhead. and then 60% of it was going to go by rail from Tashkent, Uzbekistan to Riga, Latvia on the Baltic Sea. Take a look at that rail route, and you're like, good Lord, we'd lose half of our shit. It's going through the former Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, the 40% balance, was going to go from Tashkent, Uzbekistan to Vladivostok, Russia. The minute Russia invaded the Crimea, those plans got ripped up. And they said, no, we can't do that.
Now, was it true that
Russia's
they
our.
were flying this stuff on a Russian transport that's like it
Mm,
held like 20 MRAPs to our max capacity of 8 or some shit, some giant
no, they,
Russian
they were
transport
loading it.
plane?
So you can get on YouTube and see the results of our attempt at flying MRAPs and MATVs out of Bagram.
Oh yeah, well, unfortunately I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were there
And
when that happened, right? That was when we were there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
The
that was
the
I forget
shackle
exactly
broke
when
or
that
some
happened.
shit inside the
Well, there wasn't they weren't they were using nylon straps from what
Yeah.
I heard, and nylon webbing isn't really meant for armored vehicles. You
I
need to
would
use chain.
yeah.
That's just me personally. If we have any A2As or whatever Air Force cargo load masters, they can probably correct me. But I would want to use like 3 chains per shackle on each of
Over
those
secure
fucking
it.
over. Absolutely,
Right.
I want that thing to be able to fucking still be secured after it's
Yeah.
crashed.
That was fucking sad, man.
Um,
It really was.
and so at that point, the Army says, you know what, we're just going to cut up these MRAPs for scrap and DLA auction it off as scrap steel. So they were literally taking MAT Vs with less than 500 miles on them, $800,000 MAT Vs, and scrapping them. And so
All
I
because
had
we didn't
talked
have a
to,
plan to get them out.
nope. So they knew we'd pissed off Pakistan enough times that they weren't going to let us ship it out of
Port of
Pakistan
Karachi
again,
and Karachi. Yeah.
out of the port of Karachi. And they knew already because a lot of people don't realize there's a country in between Afghanistan and Pakistan called the Northwest Frontier Tribal Territories that is lawless Pashtun land. And you lose 15 to 20% of everything that was shipped through Pashtun land. Fuel, yeah, anything that's not welded down. And we had pissed Pakistan off enough at one point that they shut their land borders off, and we were totally like an island in the middle of Asia. And they actually had to fly fuel into Afghanistan for operational use. How expensive do you think a gallon of JP8 is
Oh my
when you
God.
fly it in on a KC-135 and download it?
Oh my God.
About $400 a gallon,
Oh my
and
God. Stop.
so yeah, it's just some of the
It's just
outrageous
absurd,
logistics
man.
shit.
It
You
just
know,
people no one has any fucking clue. Like
mm-mm.
you obviously have this, this institutional knowledge, right? You've lived it, but the average soldier has no fucking concept of this, but more so, the average American has no fucking idea. They could
The
tune in
average
and be like, I don't
taxpayer
even
would
know what
be
that dude's talking
outraged.
about. That doesn't make any sense.
Yep. The average taxpayer would be absolutely outraged. But it's true when I tell people, logistically speaking, nobody does it like us. We could power project an entire armored combat brigade to Antarctica and support it year round.
Yeah.
It would be monstrous expense, but we could do it physically.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially what we pulled off when the Pakistan's land borders were closed and we had no way to drive shit to Afghanistan. We were flying everything in from MREs to Licky Chewies at the PX to fuel to repair parts. And so people like me, probably the ESC at the time, whoever was running it, had to get down and start prioritizing parts, and so that's where you start asking commanders hard questions of like, what's your priority? Do you want fuel for your Humvees to operate, or do you want food for your soldiers to eat? Take
Damn.
your pick. You can't have both,
That's
you
fucking
know.
nuts.
So,
That's,
and that's where it starts
I
getting a
mean, to
little
me, it's an easy
screwy.
choice, but I don't know. I guess some people that might be a hard one. I don't know.
And so you've been through enough NCO schools that you know
Yeah.
that's where you bust out the MDMP manual and you start and you get a whiteboard
Yeah.
and you
Let's
just keep
COA
on
one.
you. Yeah,
Everybody hates me.
exactly.
COA two.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where you get down to that kind of stuff. And everybody hates stuff like the MDMP, military decision making
Yeah.
process. For
So you
those
got to use it
who
for
don't
real.
know,
Yeah.
you actually have to bust it out and use it for real. And that's what they did. And so that's where they curtailed, vehicle patrols by 80%. And, 'cause just to keep a balance, the right balance of logistics on hand, because at a certain point you get into contested logistics, which is the latest buzzword, um, which you're going to see a lot more of coming up.
Oh, I can't
So,
wait. So here's my question to you, because I left, and like I said, I was, working on Operation Drumbeat, which was getting rolling stock out because we
mhm,
were drawing down. And you pointed out you guys
yep,
drew down from 68,000 to 9,800 by the time you left, right? There was
yep.
why did it take 8 more years almost to get us out of this country? What the fuck happened? What would, like, seriously, like, the priority
Operationally
was the
speaking,
leave. So why did it take that fucking long?
that's a political question there
It is, but
because
it was a political solution at first, wasn't it?
it was too many people were making too much money, in my opinion. We were NATO was making a lot of money because keep in
Oh
mind that
yeah.
was not a U.S. mission in
No, it wasn't.
Afghanistan. That
Yeah.
was a NATO mission.
Yeah.
So
Good old your
when
boy, General Milley, IJC commander, International Joint Command.
well, him and then General
Two star, I
Anderson
remember, was some French
after
dude.
him,
Yeah.
and then yeah, there was a Brit at one point,
Yeah.
and because I was there for like 22 months, so I got to see, I got to change
You were a
patches on my
citizen.
sleeve. Yeah, damn near, which goes into kind of like another one of my little things. I also like I had a lot of free time there. So one of my hobbies is amateur radio. So I actually had an
Nice.
Afghanistan amateur radio license and was one of fewer than
That's
30
awesome.
people to ever
Oh
hold
shit.
one. So I actually operated from Afghanistan, my amateur radio
Oh
from there.
shit.
But
What were you
yeah,
doing?
just making contacts because
Just talking shit. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
it's one of the rarest entities for amateur radio operators to operate from that country. So every time I'd get on, I'd get swamped because people wanted to make contact with somebody that had a Tango 6
Yeah.
prefix radio call because they're so rare. Less than 30 people worldwide have ever held Afghan amateur radio license.
Wow.
So yeah, it was kind of fun. It was like it was my hobby. When I'd get done, we'd work our 12 hours and I'd spend a couple of hours playing on the radio in the evening.
Playing on the
So
fucking radio. That's cool shit, man. That's
yeah.
awesome.
So but yeah, anyhow, so seeing all the different commanders, like I said, I changed patches on my sleeve like, I don't know, 6 times while I was there in 22 months, just
Yeah.
from us drawing down, it was, the footprint kept collapsing and different levels of command kept collapsing with it, because somebody'd be in charge. And like at one point, yeah, we were under Brits, we were under a German. I worked for a German at one point, and which was kind of cool because I got to break General
Throwback.
Order number one
There you go.
again
Exactly. That's the best part.
because he
They
at the
still do
point
it
was that
right.
yeah, absolutely. At one point, like I said, at the time I worked for him, he was dual hatted as also the senior German in country. So he would have to go over to the German base and perform some duties and whatnot. And he'd be like, "All right, Chief, go ahead and go downstairs to the beer stube, and I'll meet you there." And I'm like, "No problem, sir." So I'd have a couple of liters of
Oh,
good
a couple.
German beer
Nothing.
flown in by the Luftwaffe, and so.
They can
But
do that.
yeah, the
We
the
can't.
amount of waste, and like you point out in my thread there, um, I'd spent certainly a solid 18 months working at that warehouse that you
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
pictured
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And our average monthly property book, since you know what a property book is,
Mhm.
which is the listing of equipment on hand, that a person is responsible for those who don't know Army terminology. The average property book on site was $2.3 billion per month. And I was there, managed that warehouse site for 18 months. So, I mean, you see the
Oh
pictures,
my
and I could
God.
include in that thread, I point
2.3
out that
billion.
I've only included mostly vehicles. And
Yeah,
I
forget
had,
all that other shit. But then you list a ton of other equipment. Brand
I'm
new
waiting.
equipment.
I have all the other pictures because I'm going to make a new thread when it becomes
You need to write a
like
book. Is
when,
what you need to do.
so you know how I alluded to earlier, it's going to be funny watching the left defend the DoD spending.
Yeah.
When that happens, I'm going to create a new thread and show the weapons that we gave away and the night vision equipment that we gave away
God,
and the
why can't I get
se-
knobs? I want knobs.
secure radios that I gave away. That, me as a radio nerd, I was like, man, I'd kill to have one of these radios. This is a $25,000 fucking radio, and you're just
Giving
giving
them
it
away.
away,
Giving them
you
away.
know? And it's essentially like throwing, apes before the monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey. They don't, they're throwing rocks at it. They don't know what the fuck they
Yeah,
got.
exactly. No training. Nobody. Just here you go.
Now,
Figure it out.
yeah, I mean, we were trying to train them, but 2/3 of the populace is illiterate, and
Exactly.
and so it's like, yeah, you're throwing monkeys before the monolith. They don't know what they're looking at. So
My
yeah, it
God.
was kind of disheartening, in a way. In a way, it was one of my better tours because I had a whole year or over, almost 2 years as an advisor. Because not only was I managing that warehouse, I was advising them how to manage it. So it was actually owned by the ANA. I was just there. I wasn't signed for the equipment, thank God,
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
because like I said, it's $2.3 billion average.
Oops.
They would have had a hell of a lot more losses if I had any say over it.
I don't know. This radio was here when I looked last. I don't know where it is now.
Absolutely. Um, but yeah, it's like when it comes to, you know, Doge getting there to the DoD, I'm going to start a couple more threads on and a lot of it just brand new shit, like 60 millimeter mortars, 82 millimeter mortars, um, you name it, just all kinds of shit.
And we left it all there.
Yeah, we left it all. Well, we gave it to the ANA. We were equipping their MTOs, their property books. We were equipping their units, and that was the intent of it.
Did their
So
units have even did they pick this up? Did they figure out how to account for this?
some did,
Yeah.
some. I will have to give credit to our SF brothers in arms that the ANASOC, the Afghan National Army Special Operations Command, they were pretty close to being legit. They actually managed their property. They came and got it because they needed to use it and were
Yeah.
using it. And some of your infantry brigades that they had, or infantry Kandaks, their word for battalion or whatever it was. Some of them were okay, and some of them were absolute trash. And then you also ran into the problems in the warehouses. The Afghan warehouse, this one particular section might be managed by an Afghan of Uzbek descent. Well, if the order came from a unit that is primarily Pashtun, I don't care how long that order is on valid requisition, they ain't fucking getting it because there's too much tribal internecine warfare between them or animosity. So there was one, and I'll show it probably in my next thread because it was like a 50 or $80,000 radio repeater system. So using to increase your range on radio distance. And it was an automated repeater system made by Harris Technologies, which is who makes our radios. Some ludicrous price. It was on a valid requisition a month before I got there and was still on requisition when I left 22 months later and was not moving from that warehouse because of tribal differences. And your average, it's a hard time for your average soldier to wrap a head around that. But it's literally no different than saying, "Hey, those fuckers are from Georgia. I ain't giving them their shit."
Right, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Fuck them. Yeah.
That's fucking.
It's literally no different than
It's so fucking stupid. It really is. And for us to
that. I
just
mean,
go in there with this mindset that like, oh yeah, well, we can change centuries and fucking eons of this shit. Of
yeah,
course. No,
they're
come on,
not.
man.
Yeah,
They're never going
yeah.
to. If they wanted to, they would have. They've been
I
around
mean,
a
we're
lot
not.
longer. They
We
know.
haven't even got into the crazy shit that like the State Department tried to do. Of creating a liberal, left-leaning democracy in
How
Afghanistan.
did they think that that was going to take? Like just like who the fuck thought like this is a good idea and they're going to this is what they really need.
Yes, exactly. They need more LGBTQ
Give me a fucking break, man.
clubs in downtown Kabul.
Yeah,
And there
that's
was literally State Department efforts to do just that. You know, it's one thing to say, "Hey, okay, yeah, we should you should probably educate your women." It's
yeah,
probably a good thing. That was radical and extreme to the Afghans
yeah. Now let's
because
take it to a whole. Let's take it nuclear.
yeah, let's
Let's go to.
quadruple down on that shit and get you some gay, man, because what you need is way more fucking gay.
It's just
And
fuck it. It
so,
just.
no offense to gay folks in our formations.
But it's the
It's
arrogance,
just they
though.
ain't
It's the
ready
fuck.
for it in
No,
Afghanistan.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's the arrogance of people who are so insulated from their decisions, and they don't have to live through the repercussions.
No,
It, it,
absolutely.
it's it's it is just a complete utter
So,
arrogance to even try and introduce that to a culture who clearly, if they wanted it, would
yeah,
accept it, right?
yeah,
Like forcing cultural beliefs onto any culture is just stupid. Like
yeah.
it's fucking dumb. Now you can introduce some shit, but it's up to them to whether they want to interpret it and whether they want to actually, take that upon themselves and take it. Like but
It's,
for us to waste so much fucking money and resources on, and you just saw, like, look what's coming out of from USAID. Like,
oh my God,
what
yeah.
the fuck? Like, come on. You can't even make this shit up. You want it to
No,
be a comedy skit where you're just like, it's actually pretty
and
fucking funny.
that's
No, it isn't fucking funny because it's real and
yeah,
it's your
exactly.
money. It's
That's your
gone.
taxes, bro.
It's fucking gone.
Yeah, you wonder why your Social Security's in jeopardy? Yeah, because your government's been spending money on outrageous bullshit to have a
How
transgender
does it
mime
even
troupe funding in fucking, Patagonia or someplace.
Yeah, I don't even know how that even happened. I just don't understand how we get to that point. I don't. And we're still, as you said, like we can still power project. We can still do a lot of really cool shit. And I'm just trying to figure out how we've allowed ourselves to just like fall into the absolute fucking cultural gutter.
Here's how we got ourselves to that point. We've let the federal government have too much power. Our Constitution does not support our government that we currently have.
Mm,
We should be more like states should be more independent. It's that's how the Constitution was originally set up. And where you see it in practice is countries like Switzerland. Switzerland does have a federal government, but their states are almost semi-autonomous. And where you do see semi-autonomous states in a country is the United Arab Emirates.
yeah.
So,
People
in
talk
some
about them with
in
it.
some really.
Yeah, I was in the
So,
chat about their soldiers. That's all.
oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So in some of the Emirates, they're extremely conservative. Women have to be covered up.
Yeah.
Alcohol's unavailable. You go to other Emirates in the same country,
Yeah.
and you can buy alcohol, and there's prostitutes up at the top floor of the hotel. They
Mm,
just they're it's literally that night and day difference, and you
yeah.
kind of see that here in our country. Yeah, you want to go to Nevada and go to a brothel? Yeah, that's the one state you can do it legally. You know,
Hmm.
so states need to have more autonomy and more rights and more of a lion's share of the budget for themselves instead of the federal government. Federal
Yeah.
government should deliver the mail and defend the borders. That's about it.
I I'm not too I'm you know what? Like the older I get, the more I wish it was that way. I really do.
Yeah.
And we're almost getting to the point where we don't even got to deliver the mail anymore. Like I don't need half that shit that just, just defend the borders, literally. Like actually
Yeah.
defend it. So why did okay, tell me in the because this is what I'm curious because like I said, you got 39 years, you've seen everything, you've seen every administration, left, right, whatever, centrist. How did we get to the point where the border has become something that's politicized?
Well, for the longest time, both sides supported illegal immigration, Republicans and Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats did because they were importing new voters. Republicans did because they were getting cheap labor. And cheap labor keeps the labor market average rate depressed.
Okay.
So your dad back in the 60s could work for minimum wage for $1.25 an hour.
Yep.
However, that $1.25 was 5 silver quarters. If I give you 5 silver quarters today, that's not $1.25. It's about 35 bucks.
It's fucking nuts, man.
So
That's
we've
that's
depressed the
crazy.
value of our money as well as the value of our time. So that's kind of how that's the short synopsis. I'm not an economist. I just follow the smart ones to invest my money. So,
Yeah, that is
you
it,
know,
it is
but
crazy.
that's kind of where we're at. Too much power to the federal government, too much money to spend. They've blown it, they've wasted it. And the more money they waste, the less your dollar is worth. So it's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, Frank, I get it, bro. I don't know if you heard his question. His question was, let's 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 shift over to someone. Um, we've both had different experiences. You've obviously had way more hands-on, I would say, experience with the former Joint Chief of Staff, General Milley. So I knew him as the IJC commander, as a 3-star in Kabul in NKC. I would
Yep.
sit in his IJC briefs every week. And I kind of, and I've told everybody this, like I had a lot of respect for the way he conducted the briefs. Because I always thought like one of the things he always would say was, hey, trust the soldier behind the front sight post. I remember he would say stuff like that. I remember there was a time where there was a live update of a tick, and he's trying to figure out who's in charge of this fucking convoy. And the company commander of that unit that was actually in that tick was about to brief, and he's like, "You need to leave this briefing and go join your unit." Like that happened, and that was just something I was like, "Wow, that's wild." Like that's the highest rank. Well, besides General Dunford, that's the 3-star. Like, hey, Captain, I don't know what you think you're going to do. I don't need you to brief me. I need you to go join your fucking unit because they're in combat, right? So,
Yeah.
so those were my early interactions with him, and then everything obviously post that became very political. He got his 4th star
Yeah.
and just whatever, and it became what it is. But you obviously had way more intimate dealings with him, so I'm just curious.
He
What
did
what are
not
your
understand logistics. And you
How does
see that,
someone that gets to that point not understand it?
well, so usually at that level of command, they're all infantrymen.
Yeah,
For the most part, they're all infantrymen. Most infantrymen, most combat arms officers, what is their exposure to logistics throughout their career?
true.
Well,
Yeah.
as an infantry company commander, there's not much to logistic. You've got rifles, you got nods. He's got probably a maintenance warrant at the BSB who briefs the battalion commander weekly or daily on whatever shortages. And it's not much. They got what, 8 Humvees per company,
Yeah.
in a light infantry unit. There's not much for them to logistic. All right, let's move them up to brigade command. Let's give them to an IBCT. What is their MTO? Well, a couple hundred trucks, some armored vehicles, radio systems, weapon systems. He's got a pretty good understanding, and you probably got at the brigade support battalion, you probably got a W3, W4 maintenance warrant. You probably have a W2, W3 property book warrant. And between those two, they can blow enough smoke up an infantry commander's ass that will make them happy. or less pissed off about what is wrong in their formation. And then they go to various levels of school, and they get briefings, sterile briefings on doctrine and policy. So they don't really know a whole hell of a lot about logistics. The smart ones know they need to get a box of logistics off the shelf when they go somewhere, but that's all they know. Get me some of that logistics, two or three of them. However many logistics it takes, I need it. So they are smart with that. And here's our failing on the logistics side is since World War II, most combat formation commanders have never wanted for logistics. We've always, more or less, there are a couple notable exceptions, but for the most part, the Korean War is mostly what I'm thinking. But for the most part, since the Korean War, we have not let anything fail for want of logistics. So the smart ones know they need to get a box of logistics off the shelf. They don't know what that consists of. And so when they get to the star level, '07 and above, Milley would come down to a place like this logistics advisory warehouse that we're teaching them
Yeah.
logistics, and he would come up with stupid fucking questions like God, literally, and I put that in one of my tweets in that thread. God damn it, Chief. We've been teaching these motherfuckers for 5 years at that point in 2013 or 14 or whenever it was. We've been teaching these motherfuckers for 5 years logistics. How come they don't get it yet? What do you need to get them? And immediately my boss, the '06, starts kicking me under the table like, Chief, don't go Tourette syndrome on the general. Is the subtle message that I'm getting kicked in my shin with, because it's not a question I can answer. You're trying to teach illiterate savages logistics when the U.S. Army developed logistics during the American Civil War and perfected it in World War II, and we've been coasting on that success ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've improved things with modernization and ITV and transit visibility and computerization. You're trying to teach shit to people who can't read. And we're trying to teach them we created our own version, or the Afghan Army's own version of GCSS Army. We were trying to teach them an automated logistics system to people who cannot read.
So forget the whole paper and pen thing first. Let's just go straight
So
to
how do I answer that question to General Milley? God damn it, Chief, we've been teaching these motherfuckers for 5 years. It took us 100+ years to perfect our logistics.
right. And he's
You
expecting a
know,
miracle.
we've been teaching them logistics for 5 years to illiterate people. How do you want me to answer that question, General Milley? You know, it's go talk to your State Department. We go talk to your political leadership. We should have never been in Afghanistan at the level we were at. It should have only been a special operations mission. We should not have occupied shit. We should not have had, maybe have 2,500 operators in country and the logistics to support them. And all they do is go out and hit high value targets until you're tired of hitting high value targets. There's no reason you should occupy shit with 50, 60, 70 FOBs in country and occupy an entire nation that doesn't itself consider itself a nation.
Right.
There's no such thing as Afghanistan or an Afghan. They're all Hazaras or Pashtuns or Tajiks or
Yeah.
Uzbeks. They don't consider themselves a country, so why should we?
Right. It's, it's just so wild to go back and hear it and just to think like, man, that happened for 20 fucking years. 20
Yeah,
years. 20
paid
years.
my house off. Paid
Yeah, hey, there you go. Congrats.
my house off,
Now
man.
you can sell it to some Californian trying to move to Montana.
That's not going to happen. I'll burn it to the ground before that happens.
Oh man. So what's next? Where do you think
So
we're
that
headed
yeah,
right
that
now?
brings us up to Afghanistan. So all right, since post Afghanistan. So I came back in the end of 2014 after 22 months. Like I said, I quite literally paid my house off because,
Yeah.
I'm dual status mil tech, so I don't make all that much money Monday through Friday. So when I get deployed, I make a shit pile.
That's when the money comes.
And
CW5 unicorn, what up?
well, as a W-4 in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
I made
Fully charged.
CW5. I made W5 in 2017. So a couple years after I got back from Afghanistan. And as you might imagine, there aren't very many 920 Bravo CW5s in the Army Reserve.
No.
So there are quite literally two TPU positions I can fill in the Army Reserve. That's it. So they're both at the Theater Sustainment Command, and the Army Reserve only has two Theater Sustainment Commands, the 377th and the 79th. And a W5 I worked with in Afghanistan, CW5 Hal Griffin, who later ended up as the Army Reserve Command Chief Warrant Officer, talked me into it, recruited me for the Afghanistan mission. And then when he got back, since I stayed in Afghanistan for 9 months after he left, he called me up when I got back and he says, "Hey, man, we need your MOS specialty in the 377th because they were switching jobs
Can
to
I?
be go from Southcom's Theater Sustainment Command to Northcom's Theater Sustainment Command, where they were swapping COCOMs."
Real quick, was Chief Griffin, is he tall, like 6'4", bald?
He was a couple inches shorter than me, so he's probably
All right,
five
never
eight,
mind.
five
I'm thinking of
nine.
someone completely different. All right. No,
Yeah,
Tobes. Do you know a Chief Tobes?
Chief Toops. Yep, know
Toops.
him.
Yeah,
Yep,
he was the four when I was in 143rd.
Wilton
Yeah,
Wilton
well,
Toops.
that's who I was thinking you were talking about. I was like, is that no?
Yep,
It's Toop. Yeah. Okay, never mind. All
Will
right. I knew
Will
your
Toops. Yeah,
world's so small at that level, especially. So yeah, you got to know these people. So okay.
yeah. So in the Army Reserve, there's something like 400 CW4s, but there's only about 90 CW5s. So
90.
yeah,
That is wild because like I said, I've still only, especially in the reserves, I've only seen two.
yeah.
So for there to be
Uh,
90, I just crazy. That's crazy. Okay.
well, you figure like certain commands, like the MP command has a lot, the MI command has a
Really?
lot,
MPs have warrants?
aviation command has a shit pile.
I get
So
that. I'm
probably,
fine, but aviation, I mean, MPs have CW5s? For
yep,
what?
that's your CID agents, your senior
Oh,
CID
okay.
agents and
Okay.
protective agents
All right. Okay,
and
that makes sense.
CID company commanders. Yeah,
Got it.
that's so
Okay.
there's a lot of MP W5s.
Okay.
And then, like I said, you get to my level, there's only two of my MOS. And so, yeah, anyhow, he talked me into going down to the 377th because now the role of the 377th is to be the Theater Sustainment Command for Northcom. So, there's six
And
combatant.
Northcom is what?
Northcom is North America.
There
So,
we go.
North America from the Mexico Guatemala border all the way to the North Pole. So, all of Mexico, all of
Gulf
US,
of
all of Canada.
America, all that shit.
Yep, the Gulf of America, not Cuba. It does include Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, but not Cuba. So everything South America, Cuba, and everything south is Southcom. So there's six
Okay.
combatant commands on Earth: Northcom, Southcom, EUCOM, AFRICOM, CENTCOM, and PACOM.
So it sounds like Northcom's about to get a lot more famous than they have been for a while.
A little bit. If you've been paying attention to my posts and retweets on Twitter,
Yep.
now X, you
X.
see Northcom has been posting about or alluding to that, hey, there's a border mission coming up. Trump said publicly before the election, I'm going to put troops on the border. He said after the election, I'm going to put troops on the border. And effective this month at some point, he's actually ordering, and Northcom Twitter account has been posting that, yes, they are in fact putting troops on the border. starting this month.
A lot
So
of Marines
it's
down there too. Saw today.
yeah, they had already moved the Marines from wherever the Marines are based in California, and they were moving a lot of them to actually augment the border, like put triple strand concertina on the border
Yeah,
wall
I
that
saw that.
already existed there and do some of that. But I think that looks or appears to be expanding into putting a lot of troops on the southern border.
What about
Certainly, at least
no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
at least it looks to be until the wall is completed, or thereabouts. We don't have any kind of time frame that I've seen publicly released that says how long these troops are going to be on the border. But it looks like from what Northcom has been posting on their Twitter account that 10th Mountain looks to be getting tapped, and possibly other brigades, infantry brigade combat teams. So it looks like they're going to put troops on the southern border to help the border patrol interdict and secure, you know.
My, what about the northern border? I mean, you're Montana. What's that look like? Like, I honestly don't know. I don't think people have any fucking clue what the northern border looks like with Canada for the most part. I think they know like the main point, like,
Maine
Niagara
and Vermont.
Falls, right? You go up to New York and
Yeah.
like, that's the shit I had experience with in college. But like,
Yeah.
what's the rest of the northern border look like from us from a
So
military perspective?
from even a casual tourist perspective, there are places on the Montana Canada border where you can walk across with not even a fence in your road. Only a sign warns you, turn around, you are about to cross into Canada illegally, and here are the penalties for that illegal crossing.
Oopsie. You ever dance on that just for fun? Like,
Yeah, so I've got pictures of my wife. Maybe I'll have to post them on Twitter or something. So we went up there and it's an old closed down border station. It's on the west side of Glacier National Park.
okay.
And if you drive up there, it's a dirt road. It used to be open. They closed it, I want to say, after 9/11 when they wanted to focus efforts elsewhere. So they just closed that border crossing down. Since it was a dirt crossing, the only people used it were going to the northwest corner of Glacier National Park. And so all they did was just close it. They just closed the Canadian Customs Station down. They closed the American Customs Station down. They took a backhoe and dug the road up and made like not an anti-tank ditch. It's like an anti-car ditch. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure I can get my three-quarter done Dodge across it. Um, Might be a little redneck. I could certainly get a four-wheeler across it, but there's no fence. There's literally nothing there to stop you. And in fact, there's a lake that I fly fish at where you can actually get out on like a canoe, and there's signs, and there's like a string hanging that says this is the border.
That's
And
wild.
I'll sit there and cast my fly into Canada just because I
I'm
don't have a
taking your
Canadian fly
fish.
fishing license. And I'm
I
like,
got your fish.
yeah, I got your fish, eh? What's that all
Hey.
about? So, so yeah, the northern border, there's not much security, but from what I've heard, there's not necessarily any plans to put troops on the northern border because the amount of border patrol agents that normally would be there can handle what they've got.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
in
I was just gonna
addition to that,
say, just listening to how you describe it, I mean, to me, if I'm just, I mean, it sounds like a target of opportunity.
it
If
is,
I'm so
and so
inclined.
there may be some additional focus on the northern border because as the southern border becomes more secure, getting into Canada is more or less child's play,
Yeah.
for certain demographics. And doing nefarious things and sneaking across the northern border is also child's play.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
the way you
it,
describe it, I mean, all you gotta do is fly into
yeah,
fucking Canada and then go do what you want. And next thing you
yeah,
know, you're
absolutely.
fly fishing in
You're in a
Montana.
absolutely, yeah. And the weird thing is the lake I'm describing on the other side. I've never been to the Canadian side on that particular lake because I actually do obey the law. in case there's a hidden
Imagine that.
camera there or
Yeah.
whatever. But there's a little park there with a bench, on a picnic bench and whatnot on the Canadian side. And I'm like, how easy is that as a rendezvous point to where you
Yep.
could actually, I took my inflatable canoe, man packable
Mhm.
inflatable canoe out there fly fishing on this lake, and the lake's not 600 yards long. I could be on the Canadian side, grab a package of whatever,
Whatever. Yeah.
and be back over on my side, you know,
Yeah.
in
I mean, I think this
15 minutes.
unfortunately that's the point we're going to get to, right? It's just not something that's been the focus, but I think tactics shift, right? When the enemy does something different and you respond, then they gotta
That,
figure out what's
that
next. And people
that's
aren't going to
been
stop trying to come
happening.
to, yeah, people are not going to magically just stop coming to the United States
No,
just because Trump's president, right? Like, okay,
no,
that'll slow down a little bit, and you can put all that security on the southern border, but okay, they're going to find other ways in. And what's
exactly.
next?
I mean,
It's the northern border.
we can't keep contraband out of prisons. So
Right.
we're
I mean,
not
there's
going to seal
literal like
anything.
there's like how to cook in prison Instagram accounts, right? Like I mean, come on. It's it's fucking wild. No, you're right. So
Yeah,
that's why I was just curious, like, hey, I mean, I would assume we're not the only two people in the country talking about how to,
no,
secure the northern border. So let's hope that
no.
that's a conversation somewhere as well.
Yeah, more learned people than us are discussing the topic.
Hopefully, but you never know.
What they decide on. Well, I hate to use the snarky phrase, the adults are back in charge, but to a large degree they are. But, thank God for the hiatus of the stolen election of 2020 because it gave Trump time to reflect
Yeah,
on
absolutely. Oh, I agree. This was the best thing to happen to him.
absolutely, because he is now, I mean, even to the point of the difference in official photographs in the chain of command board
Oh yeah.
of the first Trump presidency with a smiling, happy Trump,
Yep. And
and
now it's
this
like,
one, which is,
yeah, yeah,
you know, you stole one election from me, motherfucker. You're not doing it again.
yeah,
I'm getting my time back.
yeah.
And he appears to be doing that by keeping them distracted with 3 to 5 outrages per day.
Oh, per day. Yeah, it's
And
nuts.
so he's totally
That's why I
inside
say,
their
like,
OODA.
what does tomorrow hold? I
Oh
can't
my God.
wait. Can't
It's
wait.
so gloriously entertaining. And every day I come home from work, my wife is like, so what's the new outrage today? Is she works an opposite shift from me. So we pass each other. She's going to work as I'm getting home. She's like, what's the new outrage today? And I'll give her like the 5 minute synopsis of,
It's funny.
well, Elon Musk hired a guy called Big Balls.
Big
Yeah,
balls.
and Big Balls is tearing shit up, man. It's
That's
awesome. She's
great.
like, "You serious? The news media is actually reporting on Big
Yep,
Balls." I'm
yep.
like,
And
"Yes, they are."
they've reported on him changing his profile name to Harry Balls. Yes, they've actually said these
Yep,
things out loud. Yes, that's how
yep,
fucking stupid they are.
absolutely. And one of these kids, I don't know if you heard it. One of these kids created a Substack
Yeah, I did see that. I don't know if it's true
that
or not, but it's genius.
charges a $10,000 subscription fee. And it says, subscribe here and I'll give you, there's more dirt on whoever. I don't think it's
Yeah,
Harry Big Balls. I think it might be one of the other kids. And apparently, if you click on it, if you pay your 10 grand and you click on it, and it's like he just
nothing.
basically gives a short bio of himself. He's like, I
Yeah.
like to play games and skateboard. It's like because
It's
he
super
knew
wild.
some of these media
Yeah.
outfits just cannot resist.
Nope.
We got to find more dirt. Trust me, if we just get
It's
one more
it's
piece of
such
dirt
a
on Trump,
loser. It's such a loser mentality, man. Oh, I'm gonna because I don't they're not on my team, so I'm gonna try and make their lives it's fucking they're the worst. They're the worst of us. They really are.
oh my God, yeah. And that's the other thing that has brought us as a country to this point is we have no more intellectual curiosity in journalism
Yep. I agree.
until Elon Musk bought Twitter.
Hmm.
And now you have all these little growing accounts, but plus big accounts like guys like Tucker Carlson
Yeah.
who figured out, oh well,
Yeah, I mean,
Fox
they
News
host
doesn't
their
want to
shows
employ
there.
me.
Yeah, he does a show
And
there.
then he comes on, starts the Tucker Carlson channel on X, and has 57 million fucking watchers,
That's fucking
viewers. That's larger than Fox News that formerly used to employ him.
20 times
It's
larger.
like
It's fucking
you really want to
it's
commit
20 times
suicide in
larger.
that
Yeah.
fashion?
No.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like he shows up there, and even honestly, guys like you and me, it's I don't know what your viewership count is per week, but I bet it's smaller than MSNBC on an overall basis, month per month. you know,
Yeah.
you may not be making the money that
No, I'm not making their money,
you're
but
probably due,
what? Yeah. I
but
mean,
as far
yeah,
as
you look at their
viewership
engagement,
goes,
like when it comes to, they've got X amount of
the
million followers, but then no one looks at that shit. No one
their
reads it. No one
their prime
likes it. No
time
one
show,
retweets it. Nothing.
no, their prime time show has less viewership than the Cartoon Network.
Oh,
You
I
know,
believe that for sure. For 100%. I believe that.
it's like you look at some of these middling to big accounts, like Cynical Publius is one of the mill Twitter
Yeah. I've
accounts that
seen
I
it. Yeah.
follow, and
Yeah.
I think when I first started following him, he was at like I don't know 12, 15,000. Now he's up to 125,
Oh, yeah. That's
160,000
awesome.
viewers, or followers. Because he writes well and he covers good shit and covers it well and is well spoken.
Yeah, he's
And
earned it.
it's like,
Imagine that.
absolutely, and then one of the things that came out today is like this smaller account. When I first started following her, I think she had less than 1,000 followers. She did an interview today. Now she's up to 135,000. That's Data Republican, who has been analyzing the data from Doge that came from USAID and has been finding like all this money that went to journalists and NGOs and different organizations that were being funded to like bring in um, migrants across the southern border and the hotels that were getting put up in and the different NGOs that were funding them and just all kind of analytical skills, more less of a journalist but more of an analyst,
Yeah.
but went from an account of like 1,200 people to 135,000
That's
in the
awesome.
space
Yeah.
of a month.
It's pretty
you know
cool. Yeah, it is pretty cool.
yeah, it is.
That's
So
awesome. All right, brother. Let's wrap it up. You can
alrighty, man.
follow good old Chief Co. What's your handle on the old Twitter and the X that they can follow you at?
ELCOPE1. Elcope 1.
ELCOP1. Please find him there. Read that thread that he has pinned just to get yourself eyes on your own accord on everything that comes from the all the waste that was in Afghanistan. And it continues to this day. It's probably still sitting in those yards as you've shown some images, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not sitting there. It's definitely deadline. Maybe we can get some of those parts back. That'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
We trade.
Certainly help our
Yeah.
operational readiness way.
All right, brother. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks
Very
for
much.
having me.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
We will throw this up tomorrow and we'll do great things in the chat. Thanks again.
All right.